Hello and welcome to another video. I just thought I would make one on the different types of Super Roses. What I discovered is very hard to convey the different versions of the Super Rose via still images due to there being multiple differences of each type. I'll also include the test set Super Rose, which is the easiest card variant to see the difference of. I'm sure you can already tell that is what we're looking at if you know what you're talking about. So the test set was the sort of, as the name it describes, set where they just wanted to see how sales would do. They did quite well, so they went into the main release. So they did release a Super Rose in these packs. However, due to the limited run, it is believed there's around 30 in the wild. That number is likely to have decreased as well, just due to most of the fan base of these cards being children, so they would have used them just as cards rather than collectibles. I'm fortunate enough to own 3. So without further ado, the differences are the test set has an yellow electricity icon, really. They're very characteristic. They're pretty much all test set Super Roses are off cut to the left, as you can see by all 3 of mine being off cut here. The other variation is that on this one it's a completely matte finish rather than the later foil finishes, completely matte. I actually prefer this one just due to it being a bit more rugged, because the foil ones would scratch incredibly easily. So that is the test set version. The quality of the image is less than the main releases, but again, this is them just starting up, so they're obviously just testing out the technology, but still, it is a beautiful card. Next up, we have the Exterminator Variant 1. So the characteristic of this, as you can see here, is the Super Rose head here, or just Rose, has no glow around the edges or her eyes. It is just her face, and as you transition, then the glow comes up. So it sort of comes up from the bottom depending on where you look. So there is a slight blue tinge very on the edges here, which is characteristic of some Super Roses, but they do tend to vary. So on the back as well, you have a BBC 2006 logo, and that is how you know that it's Exterminator. Later on in the set, or vice versa, they did introduce a different one. So this again is Exterminator, again characterized by the BBC 2006 on the rear. So this one is slightly different. It's always glowing. So there is no iteration of the image where it stops like this one. It's always constantly glowing. Not sure why they did this, but as you can see there, she doesn't stop glowing. The back is almost exactly the same. There's that one. Next is the Annihilator one, which is the one of the nicest images for the Super Rose. So as you can see here, there's a very, very big blue tinge here, and that's normally the way you find out if it is the Annihilator one. So the other way is, if you look at it like that, the glow will completely disappear from Rose's head, and it having a BBC 2007 copyright date. That is the most sought after variant, if you're into that, after the test set, because these are actually one of the rarer versions of this card. They very seldom come up, and if they do, they're normally somewhat damaged. After that is the Invader. So this, like the Exterminator 2, is always glowing. There is no iteration of this without with no glow like the Annihilator version, and again characterized by the BBC 2007 logo on the back. These are one of the most common Super Roses. 9 times out of 10, if you do see a Super Rose, it's either the Ultimate Monsters version, which we'll go into now, or the Invader version. Next is the Ultimate Monsters version. So this one is characterized by no glow and BBC 2006 on the rear with no website, almost mimicking the test set Super Rose. So on this one, if you look carefully, the eyes there, they do disappear. There is a sort of bluish tinge here, but it is just the generic one. Now recently we have also discovered what I'm dubbing the Devastator Super Rose. Now this has the most transitions per image. It is the same from the back, so it's harder to see with the BBC 2006 date there with no website. However, there is more colour and transition periods. So as you can see here, the top of the head goes blue rather quickly, like that, and then it goes into yellow. Alright, so if you tilt it back as well, a very orange tinge, orangey red, sort of appears here as well before the glow starts going. So there is actually quite a bit of a transition here, whereas compared to the old one, there isn't as much of a tinge here, so it's hard to describe. So as you can see there, there's less of a transition. So you can see the red glow and then all of a sudden that, whereas that just transitions straight into the yellow and down. There is also more of a blue tinge on the top of her head here. So as you tilt it up, you can see there is a slight one there, but this one really goes into the blue before it goes, whereas this one sort of just goes into a yellow. Because of these subtle variations, I've just dubbed this a Devastator one, on the sole basis that you would have thought that the later it is on the Super Rose, the better the transitions would be, and this is the most transitions in the card, so the technology is at its maximum. So that is all of the variations of Super Rose. I think that's hopefully that's been helpful to all of you. Thanks for watching.